Sammy and the Magical Sandbox. Written by Angel Morgan. Illustrated by Diego Pidaye. In a little house on a little street in a little town in Australia lived a boy named Sammy. Sammy's street was so quiet you could often hear the crackling of the leaves on the trees and the wind howling down the street. But no one knew that in the backyard of Sammy's house there was magic stirring inside his sandbox. Sammy's mother often encouraged him to go outside and enjoy the fresh air. Sammy loved being outside, especially when the sun was shining. But Sammy also felt alone because there were no other children around to play with. So he spent hours in his sandbox, digging away with his favorite red bucket and spade. One day, Sammy was digging a big hole when a huge funnel of sand suddenly appeared. The sand, whirly began to circle around Sammy, and it picked him right up out of his sandbox. Sammy began to cry. His red bucket and spade tumbled to the ground with a loud crash. Then, poof! Just like that, both Sammy and the sand, whirly, were gone. Sammy stood up and rubbed his eyes in disbelief. He was no longer in his little sandbox, but in a big city full of bright lights, fast cars, and lots of people. Sammy was amazed. Suddenly, Sammy was interrupted by a gentle tap on his shoulder. "Hello, what is your name?" giggled the little blonde girl standing behind him. "My name is Sammy," he said to the little girl. "Where did you come from?" the girl asked. "I came from my sandbox," exclaimed Sammy. The little girl could not believe her ears. "It's true," said Sammy. "I was just playing in my sandbox, and the next thing I was here." "Wow," exclaimed the little girl. "Would you like me to show you around?" "That would be great," cried Sammy. "I've never been to a big city before." "Well, let's get started right away. There's so much to see," said the little girl. The girl linked arms with Sammy, and they walked through the big city streets together. There were so many people, cars, and stores. Sammy spotted a taxi cab, which looked just like a toy car he had at home, but much bigger. It was honking its horn at people on skateboards and people crossing the street. "Come on, Sammy," urged the little girl. Sammy quickly followed her down the stairs to a big park in front of them. There were lots of people walking, sitting on benches, and playing ball games on the grass. Birds were circling above, searching for food. The children reached the other side of the park just as the sun was setting. Lights began turning on one by one throughout the buildings of the city. It was such a magical sight to see. It was getting dark, and Sammy worried how he would get home. At that moment, a strong gust of wind circled Sammy, and a friendly face appeared in the sand. The whirly began to speak. "Hello, Sammy. My name is Winston, and I'm here to take you home again." Sammy's face lit up in a smile. He hugged the little girl goodbye, and then stepped toward the swirling sand before him. Moments later, Sammy landed back in his sandbox, just in time to hear his mother calling him for dinner. Sammy waved goodbye to Winston and watched him slowly disappear back into the big hole in the sandbox. Sammy was so excited he could barely eat his dinner. He told his parents all about the amazing adventures in the sandbox. Sammy's mother gently kissed his cheek and ruffled his hair. "Such a storyteller you are, Sammy," she said with a smile. At night, lying in his bed, Sammy thought about his new friend Winston and the magical things that had happened that day. "I wonder where else Winston can take me," Sammy asked himself as he wearily drifted off to sleep. "Maybe we'll just have to see." Sammy and the Magical Sandbox. Written by Angel Morgan. Illustrated by Diego Pidaye.